What's going on, people? It's your boy back with another reaction video. I'll be reacting to creepy stories from subscribers based on true events. I believe this is from Unit 522 here. It's from Unit 522. I've been meaning to get these. I actually get like a bunch of these. Like horror narration that I wanted to get to. But I was planning on doing it from December 1st until December 25th. But that did not happen. So I'm just going to probably quick fire a bunch of these. So I got quite a few, but we'll see how many I get through. But anyway, let's get to this. It's like 22 minutes long, so I hope I didn't react to this already. I feel like I may have. Not sure. Anyway, here we go.
I was 19 at the time of this story. I was living in Littleton, Colorado at the time. For the brief amount of time that I lived there, I had many crazy situations that happened. For now, I will tell you about one in particular. It will help to know what I looked like so you can better understand why this may have happened to me. As I said, I was 19 at the time. I stood at 5'7", 130 pounds. I had wildly colored hair, bright red, several facial piercings, and arm and chest tattoos. It was a warm day, so I was wearing very comfortable clothes, shorts and a tank top, along with a pair of flip-flops and a sun hat. Because of the previous encounters that I've had, I stopped taking night walks. That day, I let my boyfriend take my truck to work, since I didn't have to work that day, and I had no plans. But I wanted to surprise him at work, and take him to dinner after he got off. So I started walking up Broadway towards Colfax. Now, if you've ever lived in the Denver area for any amount of time, people will generally warn you about Colfax Avenue. It's busy, and some sketchy activity takes place on that street. But for some reason, my oh-so-awesome roommates did not warn me of the many horrors that awaited me on Colfax Avenue. Okay, maybe I'm being a bit dramatic, but my experience was not pleasant. So back to the story. I turned from Broadway onto Colfax. As soon as I turned, it was like stepping into another world. There was a bus stop. I'm pretty sure I saw some guy taking bumps, pressed up against the nearest building. Several homeless people were laying and sitting in various places up the street. 2 women were screaming at each other, about something that I didn't care to gather. I walked quickly for 2 or 3 blocks with my heart in my throat. I am not cut out for this sort of social interaction. I accidentally made eye contact with a dirty man lurking in an alleyway. I quickly averted my eyes to my flip-flops and kept walking. After a few blocks, the crowd thinned, and I was feeling less on edge. In fact, I was actually starting to enjoy my walk. But then I noticed this van. It was parked across the street, trying to look inconspicuous. I saw the driver slide down in his seat, as if he was trying to avoid being seen. I couldn't make out the details, but I could see that he was an older man with a dark complexion and short black hair. Trying not to stare for too long, I committed this creeper van to my memory. It was white, with tinted windows, no company markings, and no front driver's license plate. Red flags were going off in my head, but I pushed away the feeling. I walked another block or 2, and I see the same van creeping up a side street. I get a nervous chill, though I press on, trying my best not to look frightened. After another couple of blocks, I see this van again. I didn't like where this situation was heading,
I bet.
so I stood my ground and faced the van, staring straight into the man's face and waiting for his reaction to me noticing him. To my horror, he gets out of the van, slamming the door behind him. He was a short Hispanic man, I would say 5'4", about 150 pounds, shorter than me, but definitely bigger. My mind is racing as he runs across the road towards me.
Whoa.
I'm frozen to the spot. I wasn't expecting this. As soon as he reaches me, he starts speaking in broken English, but I can mostly understand him. He compliments me. He says he likes my hair, piercings, freckles, and my ass. Oh, joy. Extremely uncomfortable by this point, I awkwardly thanked him. He then propositioned me for sex. I nearly choked and asked him to repeat himself. Not sure if I was hearing him correctly.
Oh, you heard him.
But he pulled out $200 from his wallet and offered it to me if I would have sex with him. I take a step back, harshly telling him that I'm not that kind of girl, and he's barking up the wrong tree. I turn around, and as I did, he grabs my ass. I then speed walk away from this man, trying my best not to panic and formulate a plan.
Wow, this dude.
The man follows me, waving the $200 around like it would convince me to go back. I run to the first door I see and yank it open. As soon as I rush in, I run directly into a bouncer. I then fall back on my ass with a yelp. The bouncer helps me up and asks me why I was in such a hurry. I'm still in shock at this point, and he asks me to see my ID. I look around and I realize that I'm in a pub. I then tell him on the verge of tears that I'm only 19, and I was trying to hide from a man who was following me outside. I'm practically having a panic attack as the bouncer guides me to the bar and fetches me a glass of water. The bouncer wanted a description of the man. He tells me to hang tight and disappears out the door. After a few long minutes, he returns and tells me that the man won't be a problem anymore, but I am still reasonably
I
frightened.
beat his ass.
The bouncer then asked me where I was heading. I checked the GPS on my phone, and I was only 2 blocks away from my boyfriend's job. The bouncer then clocks out on his break and offers to walk me the remaining 2 blocks.
That's nice.
I beamed and latched on to the man's arm, thanking him profusely. He pats my head and laughs, and he told me never to walk down Colfax Avenue alone again, and I promised him that I would not repeat this mistake. When we arrived at my boyfriend's job, I thanked the bouncer again and sent him on his way. I explained what happened to my boyfriend, and he laughed at me. Perhaps I deserved that, but no one had warned me of the dangers of that road. I ended up not taking him to dinner that night, and I never walked that street alone again. So to the man in the creeper van, stay the fuck away from me, and keep your $200 for something less creepy.
Like, did he think she was a prostitute, or he just going?
Before I begin, I would like to preface by stating that I'm a 23-year-old female, and I
New
currently
Orleans?
attend a graduate school in the Midwest. Earlier this year, I attended a research conference in New Orleans with 4 other grad students in my academic program. In order to save money, all of us decided to rent out an Airbnb for the duration of the conference, instead of staying at a hotel. We ended up finding a really nice studio apartment, about a mile away from downtown New Orleans. The apartment was rather small, and contained 2 queen-size beds as well as a futon. Our party was 4 girls and 1 guy. I shared one of the beds with my friend Anna.
Like a part of me.
And the 2 other girls, Megan and Caddy, shared the
I know
other
that
bed.
what they meant.
The other student, Ari, ended up having the futon all to himself. We decided to hit up downtown New Orleans shortly after unpacking and settling into the Airbnb. After exploring the area and hitting up a few bars,
Ain't been to
we
New Orleans
decided to head
in
back and
years.
call it a night, as we had to be present at the conference early the next morning. All of us hit the sack shortly after returning back to the Airbnb. I woke up a couple of hours later to a creaking sound. At first, I thought it was nothing, but then I saw the apartment doors slowly open, and a man in a black hoodie came inside. I allowed the panic to set in, and I immediately woke up Anna. When she was awake, I pointed out the man. He was slowly walking towards us.
They didn't lock
Anna
the
asked
door?
me, "Who is that?" I don't know," I responded. She got out of bed to get a better look at the guy. "Can we help you?" The man just stood there in silence. He then made his way over to Megan and Caddy's bed, who were both fast asleep. He then proceeded to climb on top of them. My heart was now racing faster than ever, but I couldn't move as I was paralyzed in fear. "Ari, why are you in our bed?" I heard Caddy groan. Then Megan woke up and yelled, "Ari, what the fuck are you doing? Get out of our bed!" "Megan, that's not Ari," I said in a trembling voice. Ari was still asleep on the futon despite all of the commotion. The man was basically on top of Megan and Caddy, who were screaming hysterically at this point and desperately trying to get him off. I told Anna to wake Ari up, and she immediately ran over to him and started shaking him. I heard her say, "Ari, wake up! There's a man in Caddy and Megan's bed right now. You need to help us." "What? That's crazy," Ari said, still half asleep. I got out of the bed and grabbed my phone. I immediately called 911, and I told the operator to send help as soon as possible. While I was on the phone, I saw Ari get up and turn on the light. He ran over and pulled the man off of Caddy and Megan.
Wow, this dude's
"Get the
old.
fuck off them!" Ari yelled and threw the man to the ground. I managed to get a better look at the intruder once the lights were on. He was bald and had a very thick beard. He was also missing several teeth. He began to laugh hysterically once he was on the
Oh,
ground.
he crazy.
Megan and Caddy both huddled together in the corner of the apartment, while Anna stood behind Ari. We were all very frightened. Once the police arrived, they gathered all of our information and escorted the man out of the apartment. Needless to say, the frightening and traumatic experience pretty much ruined our stay in New Orleans. I still have nightmares about the man to this day. Please be sure to keep your doors locked. You never know who might want to stop by for a nightly visit.
Wow, like, I'm guessing the door was unlocked. He just walks in.
I'm 22 now, but this happened when I was 16. At the time, I lived in Staten Island, New York. For a little background, I'm a female, and at the time, I was 120 pounds soaking wet with a height of 5'6". I thought I was invincible. I never imagined anything like this would ever happen to me. It was March 17th of 2013, around 10:30 p.m., and I was leaving my boyfriend's house. He walked me to the local bus stop as he always did. We joked and laughed while we waited for my bus to show up. Because it was kind of late, there weren't many cars on the street. I happened to notice a black SUV parked across the road. I didn't think much of it at the time. My bus eventually came, and I said goodbye to my boyfriend and boarded it. I took a seat next to the bus driver. The rest of the bus was empty. The driver turned to me once we hit the first red light, and he asked me, "What are you doing out this late?" It was random and a little creepy. I replied with, "I was just with my boyfriend." We made small talk, and my initial apprehension was put at ease. The driver then told me that it wasn't exactly safe to be out and about at this hour, and that I should be more careful. I nodded, but as I said before, I was an arrogant 16-year-old who thought she was invincible. As my stop approached, I looked at my phone and the time read 11:30 p.m., and my phone's battery was down to 5%. Great, I thought to myself. As I exited the bus and said my goodbyes to the driver, he told me to stay safe. I gave him another nod as the door folded back shut. For some reason, I just stood there and watched the bus make its way down the street until the taillights were well out of sight. As I stood there at the empty bus stop, a sensation of what I can only describe as impending doom came over me. I made my way to the bench to sit down. The bus that dropped me off near my house was scheduled to arrive at 11:40, only 10 minutes. As I sat there staring off into space, thinking about some things I had to do when I got home, a black SUV pulls up to the bus stop. The uneasy feeling I had earlier intensified, but I did my best to play it cool. A man rolls down the window and asks me, "Hey, excuse me, do you know what time the bus is supposed to be here?" He appeared to be a mix between Spanish and Asian, medium build. At this point, I did not make the connection that this may have been the same vehicle I just saw before I boarded the first bus. I figured that he was probably waiting for someone, so I replied, "It shouldn't be long." He then asked me how long I'd been waiting. It was then I started to freak out. This guy was giving me the creeps, but I considered that I might be overreacting just a tad. Perhaps he was just trying to pass the time, but still, I kept my guard up. I answered that I hadn't been waiting long. He then proceeded to try and make more small talk. I was trying to be polite, but I also kept looking at my pitch-black phone screen, trying to subtly hint to him that I wasn't interested in the conversation. It was dark out at this point. The only luminescence was coming from some distant streetlights. However, there were also two big trees outside the bus stop that were positioned in such a way that they blocked out most of the light. So, if this guy tried anything, the dark would have provided decent cover. I nervously clenched my phone, the uncomfortable feeling inside increasing with every passing second. He then told me that he was new to the area and didn't know his way around too well. He claimed that he was in the army and was stationed nearby. He then asked where the beach was. "It's just down the street." I told him, in a very matter-of-fact way, as if to convey, maybe you should go there so I don't have to look at you anymore. It was then that our eyes had met. I could see his face very clearly. His eyes were not like any normal human beings. It was as if they were looking right through me, staring at me like a hungry fox who had just discovered a trapped, defenseless rabbit. Then he asked me, "Do you mind if you show me around? Come on, get in the car, show me around the area." I may have been a naive 16-year-old, but I'm not an idiot. I knew if I got in that car, that would be the last time anyone heard from me. I was trying my best to show him that I wasn't afraid, so I politely declined while looking down the street from my bus. He then began to beg and plead. It was really kind of pathetic. I told him no once again. Then he said something that I'll never forget. "Come on, baby. It won't take long. I promise." My blood ran cold, and my stomach felt like it was going to drop right out of my ass. I felt absolutely sick, like I was going to throw up. But I kept my cool, and thankfully my bus was now in sight, coming down the street, and a feeling of relief washing over me. I told him no, once again, thinking that was the end of it. He then told me he'd drive me home right afterwards. This guy would not give up. I had finally had enough. With all the strength and courage in me, I shouted, "No! Leave me the hell alone, you fucking loser!" As my bus pulled up, I heard him say something genuinely terrifying, and I quote, "Fine, bitch. I'll just follow you and see where you live." My heart started to race. My hands broke out in a cold sweat, and my body began to tremble with fear. I quickly got on the bus, and honestly, I don't know why I didn't tell the bus driver what was going on. I think I was just in a state of shock. I was hoping that Mr. Jailbait Hunter in the SUV didn't mean what he said, and that he was just pissed off and trying to scare me. When I sat down, I looked out the window. I saw headlights of the SUV tailing the bus. I thought I was going to have a mental breakdown. When the bus arrived at my stop, I ran like hell. I reached the front door to my house. It was usually unlocked, but tonight of all nights, it was locked from top to bottom. I frantically rang the doorbell while going through my bag to find my keys. Then I heard someone pull up out front. Without turning around, I knew who it was. Just like in the movies, I dropped the keys as I was trying to put them in the front door. But somehow, I finally managed to unlock the door. Before turning the handle, I heard a car door slam shut from behind me. I quickly ran inside and locked the door. In a panic, I explained to my mother and my older brother what had happened. My brother ran outside and looked up and down the street. I was shaking, absolutely consumed by terror. My emotions finally got the best of me, and I could no longer hold back my tears. We called the police, and they came and searched the area. They asked me if I had gotten a tag number, and unfortunately, I had to tell the officer that it was too dark to see. But I did notice a sticker of some sort of a bird on the backseat driver's side window. It didn't dawn on me until they left that this had been the same SUV that was across the street when I was with my boyfriend an hour prior.
Oh, wow.
They told me they checked the army base nearby and around the area, but no one had seen any vehicle matching the description I gave. All I could think about was what the bus driver had said to me, and the irony of what took place that same night. Years went by, and I didn't think much about this incident after that night. One day, I was scrolling through Facebook and see a picture that my friend had posted. It was a story of a man who had been following her home from work for the past 3 days. It was the same guy who I encountered 5 years prior. My heart felt like it was going to leap out of my throat. Looking at the post, I noticed that several other women had come forward, and they all shared similar experiences to mine. I ended up finding out that he almost kidnapped a
This dude
13-year-old
must be
girl.
like a
She
serial
allowed herself to be lured into his
rapist.
car, but once inside, she noticed a roll of duct tape, some rope, a pair of gloves, and a bottle of what turned out to be chloroform on the floorboard. She ended up
Jeez.
jumping out of the window while they were stopped at a red light. I don't know all the details, but apparently, he got physical with another woman, who was pregnant, trying to force her into his car. He got ballsy and started trying to abduct these women in broad daylight. The news found out that his name was Leo, and also discovered that he had a wife and 2 daughters,
Oh, wow.
who were around 3 and 5. They interviewed his neighbors. To my surprise, they defended him, saying that all these women were lying. It's truly unbelievable just how stupid some people are. 5 separate accounts from 5 different women
can't be
who
my
have
neighbor.
no connection with each other have come forward and shared their experiences. Could you please dislodge your head from your ass and face up to the facts? Anyway, to this day, I have no idea what became of him, but the last thing I heard, he was still at large. I hope they caught him, so no other young woman have to be subjected to this monster ever again.
Yeesh. Stop it now. Yeah, you gotta be careful, man. This dude said it's not gonna take long. What the fuck you talk about? What's not gonna take? We do a quickie, like just these people. They just pulled up offering chicks money. Yeah, I give you $200 just to have sex with me. So she just gonna go and get in your car and like she's not a prostitute. Hell, even prostitutes, them prostitutes, they'll whoop your ass because they deal with this shit all the time. They'll shoot your ass, stab your ass, like so. They don't. they ready like truck drivers. They waiting for somebody to try to do something stupid to them. But these motherfuckers, like, really? It's not gonna take long. You start begging and stuff. Like, dude, just like I've seen guys. I've seen plenty of dudes that would just keep just begging and begging the women, and they're like, no, and then women and say, oh, I got a boyfriend. Whether it's the truth or not, you don't know. So I'm like, and they're like, oh, well, we can still be friends, or we can still, hang out and all this stuff. I'm like, dude, you already come at her with the intention of being in a relationship. Like, you can't be friends now. You come at her, you initiated a type of, you want to have a sexual relationship with this person. Like, you can't all of a sudden switch it, like, oh, let's be friends. And now, in the back of their head, and we're like, oh, you want to have sex with them. Like, so, like, that doesn't work. I don't know why you do that. I don't know why dudes do that. And then I've seen guys get pissed off. And then, well, fuck you then. Like, they get upset. I'm like, I've actually seen some women do that to guys. One guy kept saying, I'm not interested. And I said, well, fuck you then. And one chick, I remember I was in a mall, sitting I think I was at a food court, or near the food court. I remember smelling food. And what did she say? I think she said you couldn't handle this good pussy anyway, or something like that. And I was like, I think that's the first time at that point I seen a woman like approach a man and then he, declines her, and she gets upset. I was like, I guess that does. I mean, I know I've seen having way more dudes with the reverse. Dudes talking to a woman she's not interested in, he gets pissed off than with women. But I've seen it happen twice. Well, the other woman just said, "Well, fuck you then." But that woman, I was like, what? Like, who says that? That was hilarious. I remember laughing because we were so friends, man. We just bust out laughing. And the dude, I remember, he was like, because he wasn't that far from us. I think he was one table over, I remember. And he was just like, you see that? I was like, oh my God. Never seen that before in my life. But anyway, hope y'all enjoyed my reaction. If you did, make sure to hit that thumbs up button down below. Make sure to hit that bell if you'd like to be notified when I upload videos. Make sure to share this video on your various different social media platforms. If you're new here, subscribe. And also comment down below. I'll see y'all next video. Peace.